Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Chris Graham, joined tonight by Christian Jasper and James Watson for another edition of Pizza at the Pagoda. Boys, we had a ton of racing action this past weekend. Some scares, some officiating questionableness. We'll get James worked up here in just a little bit. But first, let's and a couple. How about a couple of badass race winners too here? But first, we'll start off with, boys, what are we drinking tonight?
Oh, your boy had to go a little bit kosher today, I guess. Just made some breakfast. I do what I want. I'm grown. I got orange juice today.
That's beautiful. Nice breakfast meal at, let me see, you're in Nashville, so you're an hour behind us too. So 6 p.m. Nice breakfast glass of OJ.
I'm grown.
Oh, that's awesome. James, what do you have in front of you tonight?
My tears and some blueberry lemonade.
Yeah, that lemonade could be a little watered down after this past weekend. I have a German Pabst Blue Ribbon in front of me. It's called a Heineken, and they're not very good, but it's barley, hops, and water, and I'll drink it.
Why would you do this to yourself?
Because it was available in the fridge down here. It was gifted, and I will never look a gift beer in the mouth.
I'll give you that one.
But with that, let's turn our attention here to a thoroughly fascinating weekend in Detroit. Race number one, we talked a little bit about how the format could play screwy with things, and it did in several ways here. But Marcus Ericsson getting his first career win, excuse me, by 1.7 seconds over Renus VK. Pato Award was third. Sato, Graham Rahal rounding out the top five. Fantastic day for Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing as Santino Ferrucci came home in the sixth position. Alexander Rossi, the highest finishing of the Andretti Autosport cars, in the seventh position. Scott Dixon, eighth. Ed Jones, ninth. Joseph Newgarden in your top 10. And finishing in, let's see, keep looking down the list. 20th position was Willpower.
Rage, pain, anger, frustration, humiliation.
I'm gonna be real. I'm not a huge Willpower fan, but I'm honestly pretty gutted for him. That was silly. It was silly. As hot as it is in Detroit, as humid as it is in Detroit, they know that not only just the drivers, but the cars need fans on them too. I think it was kind of silly to not let teams put fans on these cars when they were coming in. The red flag happening is kind of, I feel like it's kind of moot. You know, I don't feel one way or the other about it, but not letting teams have fans on the cars sooner than that, that's
here's
a problem.
The explanation that I saw from Kyle Novak, the race director for IndyCar, and this is all completely logical. Whether you agree with the logic or not is an entirely different story, but teams are not allowed when the red flag is displayed, teams are not allowed to touch the race car for cooling, driver assistance, etc., until all cars have come to a stop on pit road. That to me is a very big safety thing. You don't necessarily know what shape these cars are coming back in, and if there's potentially damaged race cars returning to pit road, etc. I mean, I see it at dirt tracks all the time. A guy will drive his car to tech with no seatbelts, no helmet, no nothing, in his street clothes. You're in a race car. These things are not built like passenger cars where throttles don't stick and all those kinds of things. I understand why, as we saw with Felix Rosenquist, what can happen when the computer takes a dump on your throttle connection to the computer. there's really nothing that IndyCar could do. The cars have to come to a stop before you can start putting fans and stuff on. So it then raises the question of, can you red flag races late? I would argue yes. Build a more robust cooling system for your ECUs.
I can't argue that. I can't argue that.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's kind of infuriating to James over here as a diehard Will Power fan. In fact, we even gave you, well, you weren't even here last week, and we gave you Will Power in the picks.
Yeah, because we all know at this point I'm not going to choose anyone but him, and I was so close to being right.
True.
And
no shame, you know what you about.
You know what? Let's kind of get off the whole red flags and fans thing. How about Will Power had a fantastic day on Saturday in Detroit?
He did.
Yeah, and it shouldn't really be surprising. No one should be surprised at this point when he does good. I mean, I've said it before and I'll say it again. You talk to anyone in the IndyCar paddock who the fastest guy is pound for pound, each and every one of them is going to say Will. He's always fast. He doesn't always get the results that go with it because of either himself over driving and doing stupid mistakes or stuff like the ECU and other various curses. But no one should be surprised when he's throwing down heater after heater. It's only a surprise at this point when nothing happens and he actually gets a result that goes with that insane speed.
I think that's kind of why the surprise happens, is because it's not as consistent as we all feel like it should be with him. He's got the pace. I feel like he has the consistency there. It just sometimes for whatever reason, like you said, sometimes from himself, it doesn't happen, even though it should.
Yeah, that's. Yeah. Can we legitimately talk about, I mean, we joke about Ryan Hunter-Reay having the cartoon anvil fall on him. Are we kind of looking at that with Team Penske at this point? If something can go wrong, it is at this point.
Absolutely.
I mean, outside of Joseph Newgarden's performance taking pole, fastest lap of the race on Saturday, 76.64 seconds by Joseph Newgarden. Fastest leader lap, 76.87 seconds by Will Power. These cars are fast. The speed is there. It's little things that are hammering these guys week to week at this point.
I mean, you can make the argument that you could say it for the whole team, but I've been watching anvils fall on the 12 car for years now. He could and should easily have way more championships and at least one or two more Indy 500s if it wasn't for a cataclysmic mix of cursed luck and his own stupidity.
Yeah, and we saw a little bit of it start to break on Sunday with Newgarden coming home second behind Pato. Power was sixth. Pagenaud was eighth. Scott McLaughlin is doing rookie things. He finished in the 20th position, one lap down. We know the kid is good. It's just a matter of when he gets the feet under him. But for the top three guys at the front of the Penske team, Sunday was a little bit of redemption, but not nearly as much as what they're going to need at this point in the season.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It was a good showing, but the fact that they couldn't pull out a win, I feel like they could have gotten Newgarden that win.
Yeah. It's kind of shades of 2013 with the top teams struggling and different faces and organizations showing up and being at the forefront. Because, I mean, you look at 2013, Penske didn't win their first race till Texas, right around now with Helio. So, and that season, a lot of other teams and drivers were running good. Yeah, of course, Scott ended up taking the title like he usually does, but there were a lot more different players then, like there is now. I mean, heck, Scott only has one win. We're looking at a serious battle between Pato and Pelot, which is something that our own Jason Owens already predicted.
Yeah. Okay, well, now it's funny that you bring up the lower teams and the success they're having this year, because in reality, it's not as prevalent as we think. It just looks that way. Pato Award is your new points leader, and we'll get to me looking like an idiot 1 week ago in just a second. Pato Award now has a 1-point lead over Alex Palou. Dixon is third. Newgarden is fourth in points. Renus VK for Ed Carpenter is fifth. Pagano sixth. Marcus Erickson seventh. Graham Rahal eighth. Colton Herta ninth. Takuma Sato 10th. When we think about the top three teams in IndyCar, I would say you could legitimately say it's Penske, Andretti, Ganassi. In any order, those three are your top three dominant teams. Looking at the top 10, the only drivers that are not in that list, Pato, VK, Graham Rahal, and Sato. And you could even put Rahal Letterman as kind of a 1A type of team. They're not a B team by any stretch. So we are seeing a lot of chalk at the head of the field. It's just not who we might have expected.
I feel like consistency has a lot to do with that. Best example I can think of would be Colton Herta. You know, he's got, we've talked about this before. He has really good finishes. And then his next race, he drops to the back of the field. And then the one after that, he'll finish high up and then he'll drop back again.
Here's Colton Herta's point tallies.
That adds up.
Point tallies round by round. 854, 830, 17, 37, 16, 32. I mean, he's all over the place. Pato is sitting on 34, 11, 35, 51, 15, 65, 37, 51. Pato is earning points at a very consistent clip with a couple of outliers thrown in. Where this championship really gets to be pretty insane is, if not for Scott Dixon's issue at Indianapolis, he's running away with this points chase. 35, 30, 53, 35, 23, 36, 25, 26. He is being very consistent Scott Dixon-like. It's just the 36 points from Indianapolis is what's hurting him at this point. Everybody else is just wildly inconsistent.
Consistency is what gets those championships. I still think this championship is wide open. Even with our first repeat winner, and even with historically, a lot of times whoever wins at least one of the Detroit races, they go on to win the championship. I still think it's wide open because of how consistently inconsistent some of the front runners are. Like the current front runners that we've got this year are.
Yeah, I mean, because, Pato is stupid quick. Pelot is stupid consistent. And Scott Dixon is stupid. Well,
everything.
Scott Dixon. I mean, only a fool would count him out. Even if he is mathematically eliminated, I will still look at him and go, That son of a bitch is up to
He
something.
could still probably do it.
He's
somehow.
still, yeah. Dixon's eliminated with 2 races to go, but he still wins the championship somehow. Here's
And
one of
see,
the
and
interesting things when we look at the standings. IndyCar does this very nice little thing where they break down road and street courses versus oval points scored. We only have one oval left on the schedule coming up at Gateway. Renus VK is your total point leader amongst road and street course drivers. He has scored 154 points to Pato's 148. Alex Palou has 153. Dixon has 139. Joseph Newgarden has 143. The reality of this, looking at how these drivers are scoring points, you can go all the way back to Graham Rahal in 8th and say he's scoring within 15 points of where everybody else has. That's 3 positions inside the top 5. So to call me an idiot, I asked a week ago if this was Alex Palou's championship to lose. Let's flip the script here now and say, how far back could a champion win? Could we see a Colton Herta championship sitting 9th in points, about 97 points back of Pato at this point?
Got to have that consistency. So far, only Dixon and maybe a couple of other people in the field have had it so far.
yeah, if he goes on a run with the way the points are, he can easily claw his way back in. We're still way too early in the schedule. A lot of things still can happen.
Dixon is getting those Al Unser Jr. quiet points. I think that's what makes him so scary this year. Because he realistically, when you went through those, he's really only had one bad race, and that was at Indy. That's it.
And now Indy is double points, which makes a huge difference. I mean, Elio is sitting on 103 points still and is, let me see, where is he? Currently sitting 20th in points ahead of James Hinchcliffe. Ed Carpenter, Roman Grosjean. Oh, man. Hinchcliffe is...
I feel for him.
Ouchies.
Yeah. Hinch is... Let's talk about this for a minute here. Is James Hinchcliffe in big-time hot seat territory?
I don't think so, because one of our
bringing in money.
And see, there's the key. One of our colleagues at Esra, Graham, works for Genesis and is a big fan of Hinch, and the whole company is a big fan of Hinch. So, and the way that he talks about Hinch, he's frustrated with the performances, but you don't get the sense that Hinch is really in danger of losing it. I think Hinch is going to be fine purely for the fact that he doesn't have to worry about sponsorship. Therefore, he's good. Because he's still better than Veach, I believe, results wise, and he's better than Veach because Hinch is capable of more. We've seen Hinch be capable of more. Nobody knows why the hell he's kind of cheeks this season, but we know that he's usually not cheeks. And so with all that, he's earned himself enough leeway to at least get one more year, at least.
Okay. I would say that's a very fair assessment of things, is we're at least going to give him another year. What happens if this continues? I mean, in all reality, Hinch finished 17th last weekend. He had a very anonymous weekend. the inconsistency in driver finishes kind of continues all the way through from top to bottom here. Jack Harvey finishing 16th. Dalton Kellett possibly getting a career best 18th place finish ahead of Scott McLaughlin, Will Power, Ryan Hunter-Reay, Max Chilton, Grosjean, Jimmy Johnson, and Felix Rosenquist. It's really hard
How about
to
Jimmy
pinpoint.
Johnson getting his elbows out a little bit?
I was just going to say, Jimmy Johnson looked a whole lot of fun this weekend. Something in that guy's
like
brain is starting to click. Yes, he did. Something is clicking in that old dog's head.
Might have to give this man a watch.
Yeah. Jimmy is, he's doing interesting things. I'll say it that way, because I don't think anybody expected him to come into IndyCar and, quite frankly, be anything other than bad. And yeah, we saw that a little bit early in the season. We're not seeing the ugliness that we saw. I mean, even he had a little self-spin in race 2. Yes. Detroit's not exactly the easiest place to get around. And you could see how winded these drivers were that have done this for a living. I mean, Colton Herta was pretty well drenched through. Will Power looked exhausted, frustrated, everything else after race 1. And they were just as bad after race 2. Like, I mean, Detroit is not an easy weekend. And oh, by the way, let's head to Elkhart Lake, where it could be 140 degrees in the shade this weekend. And one of the toughest natural terrain road courses you'll run all year too.
Yep. The humidity is a killer.
Yeah, because like in all of the indie leagues I'm on in iRacing, when I get done with the road, because these cars are just ridiculously hard to drive on road courses. You have to be anywhere near fast. You have to be on the absolute edge of control. And so driving this car that hard, lap after lap, keeping extreme focus, knowing that because you're on edge and these cars are so fast and crazy, having to be focused for that. I'm completely exhausted when I finish a race, and we're only like half real life distances, and I'm sitting in my jammies and my freaking sim rig, which is just my wheel connected to my desk on my disc chair. Like, I'm not dealing with the suits and the humidity and all that, and I'm exhausted. I can't imagine. Yeah, that too. I can't imagine having to deal with all that. I want to. I'd like to be in that there where they are, but that's a discussion for another day.
In one of the things that we can't necessarily overlook here is the role that Road America and this specific round have played in the championship. A driver who has won at Road America has gone on to win the IndyCar Series championship 7 times, going as far back as Mario Andretti in 1984. Prior to last year, Scott Dixon getting race number 1, it was Sebastian Bourdais in 2007. So Road America has not always been the best of indicators when it comes to who may win a championship. However, since 95, a driver has won the 9th race of the season and the IndyCar Series championship 11 times, dating back to Zanardi in 1998 at Portland, Hunter-Reay in 2012 at Iowa, Dixon 2015 Texas, 2018 Texas, Joseph Newgard in 2019 in Texas. Going to your point, James, that you made a little bit ago, we're now starting to get into that kind of meat of the schedule where you better start putting results up. It's time to lock in and start getting the consistent results.
Absolutely. This is where those quiet points are really going to start mattering. Like if you're not if you're not consistent up to this point and really gunning for the championship, you're not getting it. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's severely, as my dad would say, it's poop or get off the pot time. You really have to. This is the time where you prove if you're really a contender and you're worth all the talk. We're in the meat of the schedule. We're in where the part of the schedule where it shows the driver skill. This is where you need to show, hey, I'm for real.
Now, for those of you who are of the I'm going to find old races on YouTube variety, here's one to look for. The first race held at Road America for the kart series, September 19th, 1982. Actually, that's the day I was born. Check out the superlatives on this race. Widest margin of victory, 1 lap, Hector Rabaque over Al Unser. Wow, okay. Let's continue. Fewest drivers running at the finish, 8. Fewest drivers on the lead lap, 1. A caution-free race. Fewest laps led by a race winner, 1. Hector Rabaque, 9/19/82. So it appears that everybody ran out of fuel or broke on the final lap. That's something that we can't. Yeah, that just sounds absolutely intense of a race to go back and watch. But it speaks to Road America is not a place that you can have an issue and get back home. There is no limping the car home, getting up the hill to the pit area. You really need to be consistent and clean when you're trying to get around this place.
It happens on the front stretch too.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter where it happens. If you're past pit in and you have a problem, park it. You're done. Because there's no way you're getting all the way around and back to the pits.
This will be a good one.
I say this one's going to be a good one, but we're almost a half hour in here. Let's go back to Detroit for one kind of big discussion that I think needs to be had, and that is the implications of Felix Rosenqvist's accident, which was scary when you saw the car, how the car was buried into the tire barrier. Even scarier when you consider the fact that the car is a fly-by-wire. There's no mechanical connection between throttle pedal and the throttle body on the engine. And that car went full open. The kill switches didn't work. The safety systems didn't shut off. That car was at full throttle when he went into basically head on into the barriers.
I think it would be foolish for a revamp or at least a real good hard look at what the failure was to not happen. Like that's not something that we see hardly at all. Least of all in it at this level of motorsport, that's not something that we see very often at all. I'm very, very glad he's okay. Just the sheer force of that impact was scary, though.
That was probably the scariest part of it was the fact that it was instantaneous stop. And I would imagine that's why the AMR safety team elected to put a neck brace on him, take the very cautious way of getting him out of the car. That whole thing was just bad. How the car buried itself on the tire wall meant it was unstable over the course of extrication. It was just generally not a good situation. I'm a little bit concerned by the fact that IndyCar did not almost instantaneously go red on that, because they were working on Felix and you still had cars coming past
Yeah.
The way the wall gave, I mean, they knew they were going to have to repair that wall. So what's the point of circling 2 or 3 additional laps under yellow? What, just to bunch the field up? You're going to put them under red anyway and not let them work on the cars one way or the other. So bring them in and get the lineup sorted and give your safety crew some room to work.
I feel like with a crash like that, I agree that an instant red should have happened. Lineups, they could sort that out when they send them back out. That's not.
Yeah, I mean, that
whole
was
situation. Was
it's one of those where, and I don't know what the process is in race control. Ultimately, it's Kyle Novak's call as race director. But they did the same thing even when Robbie Wickens had his crash at Pocono. They circulated under yellow for a couple of laps before they brought everybody down pit road and stopped it. There's some wrecks where you just say, we need to stop the racetrack. I get you have to get them back to pit road, or at least you want to try to get them back to pit road. But without a full track blockage or something, I don't see any reason not to put the red flag out and say, car 16 down pit road, you're going to be first in line. And then you pull them back off and you sort the lineup out. I mean, hell, put a quick jack on them and tow them around in the pit area.
You know, that I saw that happen at Lucas Oil Raceway when I went up to Indy. The instant it was in the Silver Crown race, and then on the previous night it happened during the midget car race. I remember hearing the announcer say, yeah, like, if a crash can happen, but if the second that someone goes upside down, it is an immediate red flag, period. No ifs, ands, or buts.
And they have they have fewer timing loops than IndyCar has. IndyCar has at least 5 of them just for sector times. You can pretty close to spitball who's supposed to be where. We're going to go back to the last timing line, and that's kind of the end of the story. There's enough observers around the racetrack. There's enough people that you can put them in the correct spots. The other commentary that I wanted to make on it was related to the television coverage of how that incident was handled. The producers in the truck can see the cameras. So they could see Felix's onboard throughout the entire incident. They never lost sight of his face from the camera that was pointing back at him and the camera that was on top. There's still absolutely no reason to cut to an in-car shot before the safety crew has gotten there. I don't care if the driver's put his visor up to say, I'm okay. You don't show a driver until you know if they're okay or not.
Yeah, there was a whole lot of that this week. I mean, look at Christian Eriksen, the Euros, and all that. Not great coverage they were doing of him collapsing. I just don't know what was up with TV coverage and showing things that really shouldn't have been shown yet.
It's sort of a delicate dance. As someone who has produced auto races before, we've done a ton of real world, real life racing coverage. And one of the things that we train our producers to do is, and our camera operators for that matter, you don't leave the scene of an accident. And the reason for that is, at some point, your footage could become evidence. Whether that's in a worst case scenario where there is a driver that is fatally injured, you have police or coroners or somebody who's going to say, I want every bit of footage you have. Okay, here it is. However, the other part of it is, it's a great training tool to keep the cameras pointed and fairly close for that matter. keep the cameras pointed at the incident scene so that the safety team can go back at it and look at it afterwards and say, hey, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? Every AMR safety team vehicle is equipped with remotely controlled video cameras. There's a camera that points out the front windshield that is activated as soon as they hit the button to go caution. All the safety vehicles' cameras start recording. There's a remote control pan tilt zoom camera on the roof of all of those trucks. Some of the crew people may even be wearing body cameras at this point to really see for the people that are assigned to the drivers themselves. There's a lot of benefit to having the video of the incident, but just because you have it doesn't mean you should use it. There's no reason that you have to keep the... Why did we need to see the clip of Felix going out on a backboard and being loaded into the ambulance? They showed that later in the race. It's like, we haven't heard anything on this guy yet. Yes, he was awake and alert. So was Mark Donahue after his crash. And he passed away a day later from a brain hemorrhage. Just because you have the footage doesn't mean we have to use it.
I mean, well, hell, they were putting Newman's wreck in commercials like weeks after. Like, what even is that?
You know what? I'm okay with that stuff. If the drivers are okay, I don't have a problem with it. You're showing things are really spectacular. And to use one of the more grotesque of examples, they don't use footage from Vegas in 2011 in promotional campaigns. That's not something that people want or need to see again. But there is some value to saying, oh my God, did you see that? That's the moment that you're selling. That is your product. It are those holy cow moments. The big wrecks are part of it. So I don't have a problem with using it after the fact once you know they're okay. It's just live in the moment. Like, his family does not need to see this over and over and over again.
Right.
While they're trying to get him to a hospital.
Yep. No replays until you know that they're okay. And that I would say that would be word from either specifically the driver, because they've got access to the radios too. Or even from the hospital itself. Like, just hold. Just hold.
And that's something that you can also communicate that. One of the reasons that I've heard that they will show that footage is to show, hey, they're okay. The driver does, excuse me, the driver's lost the radio. And in an incident like that, there's a million ways that the radio will become disconnected or broken. The driver has not communicated to the team that he's okay. You can show the team on the broadcast, hey, he's okay. We can see him on camera. It's one thing to show that after the commercial break, but there's nothing that's stopping a producer from calling the pit producer and saying, hey, get somebody over there and let him know he's okay. You don't have to show it to everybody. There are ways to communicate information that don't revolve around show your 500,000 television viewers what's going on inside the cockpit of a freshly crashed race car. And Felix was very obviously in pain when they cut to him.
Yeah.
So I won't harp on NBC too bad, but that one I think was a little bit of a miss in the coverage. Looking ahead now to Road America weekend. We talked a little bit about it here. Actually, Felix Rosenquist is the most recent winner at Road America, picking up the second end of the twin bill last season that was scheduled due to COVID. Scott Dixon picking up the win in race number 1. Pato Award, Will Power, Alexander Rossi, Alex Palou, all standing on the podium that weekend. Maybe a little bit of hindsight's 2020, but did we start to see the coming out party for Alex Palou a year ago at Road America?
Could have. I think we could have. It's probably going to take him maybe a little bit longer to really get some real good consistency in, but he's been looking pretty good.
It's definitely an interesting weekend to watch because when you listen to the names that we just rattled off, Rosenquist, we have not heard anything on yet. We don't know if he's going to be able to compete this weekend. I would assume that determination will come later in the week after some post-concussion protocol impact testing and that kind of stuff. But Pato Award with a second place, Alexander Rossi with a third. Rossi, I mean, at this point, it seems like Rossi's on the podium everywhere we've gone in the last couple of years. He's been nowhere to be found, but he put in one of, if not the most dominant performances I have ever seen in that 2019 race here at Road America. He absolutely decimated the field back in 2019.
He did. He did. I don't think that's going to happen this time, though. I really don't. He's where did he finish in race 2? Race 1 he had a top 10, but
race number 2 he finished 13th, 14 seconds behind the leader. Now, he was one of the ones who was sort of caught out on pit strategy, but still just kind of nowhere to be found. It's not been a good year for Alexander Rossi by any stretch. And at this point, I almost wonder if he's not in write it off territory and start doing some testing of other things. But I don't know that we gain much by looking at the result sheet from race 2 in Belle Isle, because Joseph Newgarden led 68 of 70 laps and 67, and he didn't win. He came home second. So yes, it was, if you look at that, it was a street course parade and we saw anything but that. How big is strategy going to be this weekend at Road America? Is that something that you can rely on and say, hey, we're going to throw a gamble here. We're starting 15th and we think we got a shot. It doesn't really feel like it's that kind of road course.
Too long. It's too long. Unless everyone can run tight, I don't think it can happen. I don't think we're going to see the field run as tight as we did at Detroit at all.
I would say I hope we do, because those races they're always the fun ones. You know, it's going to be interesting to see what we come up with this weekend at Mid-Ohio. And looking back to the point standings a little bit here, we had everybody within the top 3 were kind of checking themselves out a little bit. Now we've got to go all the way back to 6th place Simon Pagenaud to find the 50-point gap that we had within the top 4. My first question on the rest of the season is, we know Pato's for real. Can he make it the rest of the way? Can he keep doing what he's been doing? And the same question to me would go for Rinus VeeKay. Can these two young kids go out there and keep doing the insane things that we're seeing them do with race cars?
I'd like to see more of VeeKay. I think Pato can do it, though, because he's number one. He is the first repeat winner we've had this year after, 8 races?
It was after 7, yes. And actually, it tied the all-time record for most consecutive races without a repeat winner to start the season.
God, that is insane. I think we're gonna see Pato shine even brighter than he is now, because the 2 races that he's won, when he got out in the front, he disappeared. He was gone. The lap that he made it happen, he was gone. It happened at Texas and it happened at Detroit in the second race. after he got past Newgarden in like a lap, 2 laps, he built a 4-second lead on Newgarden. Newgarden was on scuffed tires, but still, I think he's going to be one to watch.
I would agree with that in a pretty big way. I mean, we have a monster weekend coming up here at Road America. Unlike what we saw at Belle Isle, where teams got one practice before qualifying or 2 short sessions before qualifying, which was truncated qualifying. We have a very different look here when it comes to how the Road America race weekend is going to shake out. Everything actually starts for them on Thursday with a full testing day for the entire road to Indy. Friday has USF 2000 practice, Indy Pro 2000, Indy Lights. Radical Cup is there as well. IndyCar gets their first taste of the racetrack at 4:00 on Friday. There's a lot of very compatible rubber that's going to be laid down this weekend. So from a technical standpoint, there's a little bit less of that headache where you have the sports car tires that you kind of had to get that rubber cleaned off the racetrack before things would start getting quick. We've got a fantastic show coming up all weekend here for IndyCar, including, how about this, a noon start time on Sunday. Thank you, sweet baby Jesus. Keep them coming, please.
Oh, wow. That's early.
The way it should
most
be.
Everyone I know back.
Yeah. True. That's good.
It's not quite what I would say as a native West Coaster, but I'll give you it.
Yes, the early start times are not good for West Coast TV ratings. However, for the fans in the stands, starting a race
Agreed.
like Road America, you've got, unless you live in Milwaukee, you're a 3 or 4 hour ride home. So a race that starts at 3, ends at 6, you're talking about having to bring kids home after a long day in the sun and everything else that goes along with it. You're getting the family home at 11 o'clock, midnight. That's just a long day. Get out, get the race done before the heat of the day. And there's still stuff on track until almost 4 o'clock, too. After the IndyCar race, there's a Radical Cup race. The vintage cars go back out on the racetrack. It's still a very jam-packed weekend. But man, this one is going to be fun. All 3 rungs basically of the Road to Indy ladder, plus the Radical cars, the vintage cars. Is there anything better than a full weekend of screaming race cars around Road America?
Oh no,
Nope.
Hard to top it other than Indy.
Definitely one of the fun weekends that we get to have here. That's for sure. So make sure you check everything out here on practice sessions, and qualifying will be on Peacock. I'm sure qualifying will be tape delayed in some respect on NBCSN. I don't remember if this is a network race or if this is an NBCSN race. Maybe a network TV race, but we've seen a lot of great stuff out of NBC. And kind of an interesting note here that we saw that CBS is kind of not interested at this point. What do we think the future holds for where we're going to be watching IndyCar? Are we going to see more and more going to streaming services, and are like the Road to Indy broadcasts going to have to come up in standards a little bit? Because Indy Lights gets the full NBC treatment. Indy Pro 2000 and USF 2000 are, it feels like a couple of GoPros with the public address system, like we're watching single A baseball or something.
I'm really disappointed with how they handle the broadcasting of the feeder series to IndyCar, because the best comparison I've got would be the FIA with Formula 4, 3, 2, and 1. You know, you can Formula 4 is a little bit harder to either watch or to find, but Formula 3 and Formula 2 have broadcasts that are just as good as Formula 1. I and geez, like the road to Indy races, they happen to be just as good as some of the IndyCar races sometimes. And the best base I got, I have that from is from when I went to the Carb Day Classic. Those races were action packed. Like I feel like it's foolish to not treat the feeder series with respect. The best I could say, because it's disrespectful to the series. Like you have eyes on the main series, but you don't have eyes on the drivers who are coming up. You know, like there's
It's very
the Indy
hard.
500 is probably the best example. They were talking about so many drivers in the field, especially who were at the pointy end of the field. It's like, yeah, these are all road to Indy graduates. I literally never would have known that if they didn't mention it, because none of it is ever shown in a way that's really accessible. They don't make it accessible. They don't give USF 2000 the time of day. They don't get the IP2K series the time of day. They don't even give Indy Lights the time of day. And it shows, and it's upsetting because those fields are stacked, especially the USF 2000s. 25 cars going around Lucas Oil Raceway. Are you kidding me? How could you not have cameras on that?
And not only that, but the racing was the Carb Day Classic, well, Carb Night Classic that became the Carb Day Classic, day after Carb Day Classic, whatever you want to call it. That had caution-free races from USF 2000 and Indy Pro 2000, and they were tight. Those races were absolutely fantastic. I get the production costs to put on the big broadcast style show is more than what Anderson Promotions is going to be willing to put out. You can't sell the eyeballs. You can't sell enough sponsor dollars to make up for the cost. But with that being said, with the exception of places like Road America that are absolutely massive, I mean, you're talking miles and miles of fiber that you have to run to every camera point. A race you should not feel like you're watching something on Flow Racing or Dirt Vision when you're watching a Road to Indy feeder series. You graduate from local tracks to the Road to Indy. That's where all of this stuff should really start to step up. And I know Anderson Promotions is not flush with cash that they're going to go out and spend $500,000 a weekend on broadcast. But there's a little bit more that can be done. I mean, we're really not doing this series justice whatsoever. It literally, the graphics are like Race Monitor. It's timing 71 is what's in the upper left-hand corner of the screen for graphics. So that tells me you have literally one person that is running the production. Put the graphics up and just flip camera to camera. Keep your eye on, because they're all fixed cameras. It kind of boils down to the networks are not going to let somebody else touch their equipment. So how does Anderson Promotions either run a separate broadcast, or they have to turn around and say, okay, we're going to pay all the money for the broadcast guys? The camera ops are not cheap. The technical directors and everything else are not cheap. But man, what a perfect training ground for people. We're going to get you some experience in the truck. No, you're not going to have all the bells and whistles and 800 cameras like you have for IndyCar. But man, you can get the new guy some laps here, especially in the summertime. Hey, intern, go grab that camera. You're working for nothing.
Not
You
even just
steer it.
intern. Bro, you could literally go up to colleges and say, hey, go up to a sports broadcasting program at a college and say, hey, who wants to work in the truck for a bit? We got an event coming up this weekend and we could use some people. You would have so many people hopping on that. At least I feel like you would.
I tend to agree with you. The argument always is you have to pay people what they're worth. There's the costs that go into it are pretty big. You know, take the cameras that were all locked down in Detroit and put a camera op on them. At a minimum, you have to house them for the weekend, feed them for the weekend.
Team up with a university, make a scholarship, see what
It's
happens.
like I said, I don't necessarily disagree. I think there are too many camera ops and producers working in auto racing streaming right now that are not paid what they're worth. I don't want to see that start to creep into things like the road to Indy, because then it becomes a race to the bottom of how cheaply can we do this. But yeah, we can do
True.
more on the broadcast side for the road to Indy stuff. Looking at what else we have coming up here over the next couple of weeks, we actually get our first break in quite a while here after Road America. July 4th at the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. Then we go August 8th. We go almost a full month without racing action because of the race that was canceled in Toronto. Down to the streets of Nashville. The question becomes,
boy.
What race becomes a doubleheader? Is it Mid-Ohio? Is it Gateway? What race is going to be the next doubleheader that we see to replace the Toronto race?
I hope Gateway. We need more ovals on the schedule, and so I really hope it's Gateway. And if they've already done a doubleheader at Gateway, we need more ovals on the schedule.
I agree. I think Gateway would be dope. I feel like it's going to be Mid-Ohio though. I really think it's going to be Mid-Ohio. I would much prefer Gateway, but I don't know. I don't think I see that happening.
Yeah, there's pros and cons to both. Mid-Ohio is a network TV race, so you will have a little bit bigger coverage than what you get on the NBCSN races. The other thing that goes along with it is you do have the big gap to Nashville. Whereas you go from Gateway August 21st, the next race is at Portland on September 12th. There is a gap there, but it's not as big of a gap, if that makes any sense. You're talking a month off between Mid-Ohio and Nashville. Could we see an oddball that they throw in? I mean, IndyCar is not exactly publicly saying we're going to throw something against the wall and see if it sticks, but I don't even know that there's time to promote a race anywhere else at this point.
Nashville doubleheader. Call it Nashville nonsense.
I'm okay with that.
Yes, and then we show up and it turns into Baltimore or San Jose and cars are jumping off the bridge or something. And
oh my God.
Yeah. No, Nashville will not be the doubleheader. As fantastically cool as that would be, Nashville will not be the doubleheader. By the way, a 5:30 p.m. Eastern time start for that one. Let's go heat of the day in downtown Nashville, Tennessee, the first weekend in August.
I'm telling you right now, that race is going to be abysmal. Like we saw drivers visibly damp today. It's going to be just as bad because they are. I mean, not only are they going right over the river, they're going to be right next to the river. So they're going to be feeling it. They're going to be feeling it. If it rains, it'll be a spit of rain and it'll be stupidly humid. But more than likely, it's just going to be really, really hot, really, really humid.
So what you're saying is, for those fans that are coming down, be prepared to drop, well, everything you have at Tootsie's Orchid Lounge, a couple of blocks over from the excitement that'll be going on.
Yeah, if you're coming to Nashville, you need to bring a t-shirt, some shorts, an umbrella, maybe for the sun and for the rain. Bring some sunscreen.
And $80,000 to spend on Lower Broadway. Only place in the world you can.
That's just on parking.
Yeah, really. Only place in the world that you can go to a Taco Bell at 8 a.m. and have drunk people playing live music. Nashville is one of my favorite places on the planet. I absolutely love it.
I still cannot believe that Taco Bell is on 2nd Avenue. When I saw it, I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah, I'll take it. But let's kind of get into this a little bit here as we get ready to wrap up the show. From a scheduling standpoint, now I understand we lost Toronto, but is it really a good thing to go quiet in the middle of summer? We basically would have gone from June 20th to August 8th with only 2 races. One of them being on the 4th of July. 4th of July has not worked for racetracks, at least the big racetracks, in quite a long while, to the point that Daytona even got off the 4th of July.
I don't exactly know how to answer that one, only because that gap it's kind of out of their control.
Well, yes, this year it is. Because of the Tokyo Olympics, basically the broadcast equipment isn't available. So you do have the shutdown for the Tokyo Olympics, but I don't know. There's parts of this just kind of makes me cringe. For those who may not know, IMS Productions is one of the world's largest sports production groups. They send most of their equipment and the vast majority of their people to wherever the Olympics are. It's pretty crazy the amount of gear that in the business. It's IMSP. It's IMS Productions. That's owned by the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and IndyCar. So it sucks that you kind of have to deal with it, but I guess for this year, we'll let them get away with it. Rounding out the schedule, we head to Nashville, back to IMS for the road course race, and then off to Gateway. Pretty busy month of August. And then we are on to the West Coast for the month of September. Portland, WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca, and the streets of Long Beach to round out the schedule. In closing here, before we get to our recap of picks, how insane is it going to be with potentially 3, 4, 5 drivers all having a shot when we get to Long Beach to crown a champion? I may have a new favorite season-ending venue.
I love it. It's so good. It's so good. I think this is going to stay wide open all the way until Long Beach.
I
think each.
Go ahead, James.
I think each week we're going to be talking about the latest person to kind of step forward and throw their hat in the ring as the new top contender. I think every race leading up to Long Beach, we're going to be talking about how, oh, it's now this person's championship to lose. Oh, now it's this person's championship. And I can't really think of very many better places to end the season at than Long Beach.
Yeah, I think we're going to have 1 or 2 more new winners this season as well. Maybe more.
I would agree with that in a pretty big way. When you consider that none of the Team Penske guys have won a race yet, put the 3-team Penske guys up at the front, you're down to, let's see, you're down to 5 races left, potentially, with only one repeat winner if each of the Penske guys scores a win. Throw in some of the Andretti guys that don't have a win yet. We could actually go almost a full season and only have 1 or 2 repeat winners. Absolutely unreal. But let's get it down to our picks here that we made from last week. James, you are going to absolutely love the shenanigans that went on here. It is a very close to a tie for who got the anchovy of the week right. I said the weatherman was going to screw it up. It looks like he did not. We had a pretty good weekend for racing, so I was a bit of a loser. However, Mike McCullen said Will Power would be the anchovy of the weekend. He is definitely absolutely nailing that one on the head. So, Mike, congratulations on the win for your anchovy of the week. Christian picked Alexander Rossi, who was 7th and 13th. I don't know if that qualifies you as an anchovy, but it was kind of the pepperoni and mushroom. It was a pepperoni and mushroom pizza.
I'll get
very, very generic. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it was there.
It's pizza. It's pizza.
But it's pizza. That's it. But it was pizza. He showed up. Okay, our picks for race winners. Christian took Joseph Newgarden. He came closest with a 2nd place finish. Mike had Simon Pagenaud, who finished 12th and 8th this weekend. So very meh. I don't know what goes on a French pizza, but it was the boring version of whatever that is. I had Graham Rahal, who looked quick all weekend. 5th place. Very solid weekend for the Rahal Letterman Lanigan team. In fact, great day on Saturday. But Christian picking up the win on that one. James had Will Power. He wasn't even here last week, but we gave him Will Power anyway. Yeah, so close and yet so far away. Let's go to our picks for this weekend. Mike is not here, so let's pick who do we think is going to be the anchovy of the week? Who would Mike pick to have an anchovy-like weekend?
All right, Jar. I think that's who you would pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. He would
Will Power out of spite.
Yes, just to bury James a little bit further. We'll send him a message. We'll either give him RHR or Will Power. Just because this may turn into a fantastic running joke at this point. All right. Christian, who you got? Who's the anchovy of the weekend here?
Oh man. I feel like this is kind of a mulligan pick, but I think Hinchcliffe is going to be like I don't think it's going to be good for him at all.
We may actually have to start putting criteria on this, because if Hinch does what he's done all year and he finishes 17th, 18th, whatever, does that really make him the anchovy, or does that just make him running up to par for what he's been doing? And that kind of hurts, because I do like Hinch, but poor guy is just nowhere to be found. Let's see. James, who are you going to call for your anchovy of the week?
I think I'm going to go Pagenaud. He's been kind of solid this season, but I don't know. I'm just not really expecting a whole lot from him.
I'm going to go out on a limb here. I think this is the weekend that we start to see the big points shake up. Alex Palou finished 15th and 3rd in 2 races at Detroit. He got his one junker out of the way. And I hate to make this pick, but I think Pato O'Ward has something this weekend that just doesn't. He's either really on or really off. And of late, it's been all on, and he's been pretty spectacular. I'm going to say Pato Award is the anchovy, pineapple, whatever you want to call it, of the weekend. So now we're time to our picks for winners. James, we're not even going to bother talking to you. So you're going to pick Will Power. So who is Mike McCullen going to pick for race winner this weekend?
I think Mike would say Pato.
James, what do you think?
I mean, I don't think that's a bad choice.
Okay, 2 votes. One has him as a race winner. One has him as the pineapple of the week. Pato Award getting at least a whole lot of discussion points. By the way, how have we not talked about him a ton in the last hour or so? That's kind of ridiculous. Excuse me. Christian, who you got? Who's your pick for this weekend?
I think Graham Rahal is going to work some magic this weekend. Because he had a really solid weekend in Detroit. I think he's going to build on that. Because he's sort of been like Dixon, being pretty consistent, getting some good points. I think he's going to pull something out this weekend.
I would say
last year Graham looked really good at Road America. He probably would have had a good finish in race 2 with how it was looking if Will didn't go full whatever the hell he was doing on the opening of last year's second Road America race.
Yeah. I tend to think it's not a bad pick. Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing has been good this season, and sometimes good is good enough. Currently sitting 8th in points with Graham. Sato is 10th in points. A couple of top 10 finishes, top 5 finishes for both of those cars would not surprise me one bit. I think they're interesting picks here, but when we go back and look through the results post-merger here, so going back to when the IndyCar series that we know today returned to Road America in 2016, Will Power, Scott Dixon, Joseph Newgarden, Alexander Rossi, Scott Dixon, and Felix Rosenquist picking up wins. The only outlier in that group is Rosenquist 1 year ago. Everybody else, every other race has been drivers at the pointy end of the field that have been towards the front, maybe not leading in points, but towards the front in points. So I'll go the other way and say your road course points leader, Rinus VK, will pick up the win this weekend at Road America.
I can see it.
I can see it. The kid has.
I think it's a bold move, but I can see it.
The kid needs a couple of wheelbarrows to carry his stones around, and Road America is a place that absolutely rewards the brave. For all the same reasons that I'm picking Pato to be the anchovy of the week, I'm picking VK to be the race winner. It's one of those places that it rewards almost stupid bravery at times. Being willing to force the move, and you've got to have a car going into that place. You've got to have a car that's going to be quick and have a ton of power behind you. I think the Chevys will do all right this weekend. But with that, we will wrap up this edition of Pizza at the Pagoda. We will be back next Monday with a recap of round 9 of the NTT IndyCar Series Championship, the Rev Group Grand Prix at Road America, a tribute to first responders is how the race is titled. We will look ahead to 4th of July weekend and the race at the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, and we'll have a couple of weeks here where we can start to talk about silly season and some of the other stuff that's coming up here. Is we're at the halfway point here already, gentlemen. Pretty crazy to think about that we are halfway through this 16 race schedule for the NTT IndyCar Series. Been a lot of fun so far. We've got a whole lot of racing coming up. But for Christian Jasper, James Watson, the absentee Mike McCullen, Tony Patty, who I believe is doing marriage preparation, which is why he hasn't been here the last couple of weeks. Well, he's doing what he's told to and getting ready to get married. We'll wrap things up, and I'll say my name is Chris Graham. It's been a pleasure to have everybody listening here. We'll talk to you next week with a big old recap from Road America. Thanks for joining us, everybody.